But you say, I'm afraid my denominational secretary wouldn't like it, then do what that boy said, whatever it was. What it said, like it or lump it. I am sick up to here of preachers letting dirty, rotten rock music ruin our churches and thereby ruin our nation. I was in a certain house out in Munster a few years ago, and in fact, it was when Lindsay Terry came to our church, I think. Some of us were looking for a house for the Terry. And so we were in Munster, and I noticed that they had some boys there in the house, and there was a picture of the Beatles. And by the way, to my way of thinking, the Beatles have done more to destroy America than any 4 people I know, 4 or 5, whatever it is. The Beatles, that is some kind of bug. I forget what it is. But I'd like to squash it. But anyway, they had pictures of the Beatles. And I said, how nice. You have 4 boys, and the boys got their girlfriends together for a group picture. Isn't that nice? And the lady said, well, that's not the... I said, I know what it is. I think that's just as sweet as pie. And I said, boys, each of you has a lovely girlfriend. I think they're very, very pretty. They're the Beatles, all in one picture, you know. And as I walked out of the house, they're still shaking their head, trying to convince me those are the Beatles, and I was trying to make them think that I thought it was they were the girlfriends of the boys. Sidney Finkelstein said, let's replace the classics with the jungle beat. Now, here's the spokesman for communist culture. He said, let's replace the classics with the jungle beat. Now listen to this. Plato, who was not stupid, of course, said in his great writing, The Republic, I quote, the introduction of a new kind of music should be shunned as imperiling the whole state. Plato said that. Many generations ago, Plato begged the legislature to ban all music with an effeminate and licentious character because, quote, it will destroy our nation. And ladies and gentlemen, look, these rock festivals, these dirty, lewd, sensual, vile, filthy, vulgar, satanic-inspired rock festivals will soon destroy and cause our nation to decay. And let me say this, every one of you young people, every one of you, and those too, sit around listening to a radio, some rock music, and some dirty radio station that plays this dirty, filthy rock music, then, on destroying America, you're going to face God over every one of those sorry things you listen to. By the way, parents, you say, but we don't do it in our house, then you better check all the earplugs too. Don't you allow an earplug attached to a radio in your house. Throw them away. He said, well, how's you're getting me in trouble? I hope I do. I hope I get you to the place where you can't play one song with the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, or the Jefferson Airplanes, or any of the rest of them. I hope I get you in such hot water, you got to be decent young folks. I hope I get you in such hot water, you got to hear decent music and be decent kids and not be a part of a communist conspiracy bent to destroy our nation. David Thoreau made this statement in his writing to Walden, quote, music may be intoxicating. It has helped cause the destruction of the Greek and Roman empires, and it will sooner or later destroy America and England. These were not excited reactionaries. These were men who knew what music could do to a society. The ancient legislators felt, listen to this, that they could not form a state without the help of a lyric poet and maybe even a dramatic poet employed as an officer of the state, like a Secretary of State or Secretary of War. Scientists have experimented with dogs and have found that certain music played while dogs are eating causes them to lose their appetites or to increase the action of their salivary glands, which causes the dogs to eat more. I know that's true because I can hear the Beatles and lose my appetite, and I'm not even a canine. Just as music will stir the appetite for food, music will also stir other appetites as well. There is a direct correlation between music and decent living, immorality, indecency, dope addiction, LSD, filthy bodies, long hair, shaggy beards, dirty feet, and sandals on the feet. In fact, I'll go so far as to say this. And now, somebody else may walk out on this one, but don't forget, I'm shooting for 8. Now listen. I'll even go so far as to say the members of this church who wear long, shaggy hair do not listen to the best kind of music. Now, you can come after the service and say I'm wrong, and I'll apologize to you. But I'll go so far as to say that the members of this church who do not wear, the men who wear long, shaggy hair, I'll go so far as to say that you in the last 7 days have been listening to this dirty kind of music. Now, by the way, Now, this is where I always get some laughter, and folks disbelieve me. But have you read that people have been experimenting with plants, and that music even affects plants? I have a note that's placed on my pulpit tonight from a Moody student. Brother Hyles, some junior high students in Frankfort, Illinois, did a science project concerning the effect, if any, music would have on the growth of a plant. Those plants that grew near classical music grew toward the music. Those that grew next to rock music grew away from the music. Did you know a petunia's got more sense than you have? They've experimented on green beans. And they find that a green bean plant that grows right next to rock music played regularly will die, and a green bean plant that grows next to classical music will produce green beans almost as big as those grown in Texas. Did you know that many of the nations of this world are spending millions of dollars tonight on government-sponsored projects trying to determine the effect that music has on plant life? A doctor's wife in Denver, Colorado, proved conclusively to those who saw her project that plant life would be affected adversely by rock music and positively by the classics. Now, two things. First, rock music is being used with the communists to bring communism into America. Now, listen carefully. Consider the Beatles hit back in the USSR. Be honest now. Now I won't ask you the question. One reason that our country is going toward rock music is that the communists are using it. Capitol Records says of this song, back in the USSR, this is the Beatles' biggest hit now, quote, "It is the fastest-selling record in recording history." I don't mean now the thing is sold in Russia. I mean your kids are listening to it, and you don't know about it. They're hearing back in the USSR, that's back in Soviet Russia. Here are the words. Been away so long, I hardly knew the place. Gee, it's good to be back home. Leave it to tomorrow to unpack my case. Honey, disconnect the phone. That sounds like a wonderful song, doesn't it? I'm back in the USSR. You don't know how lucky you are, boy. Back in the U.S., back in the U.S., back in the USSR. Well, the Ukraine girls really knock me out. They leave the West behind. Moscow girls make me sing and shout. That Georgia's always on my mind. I'm back in the USSR. You don't know how lucky you are, boys, back in the USSR. Show me around your snow-peaked mountains away down south. Take me to your daddy's farm. Let me hear your, and I wouldn't pronounce the next word, ring out. Come and keep your comrade warm. I'm back in the USSR. Boy, you don't know how lucky you are, boys, back in the USSR. Now, that's the Beatles' latest hit. It is being sold in record stores to your boys and your girls and young people. If you buy it, God pity your wicked soul. And parents, if you let them listen to it, God pity your wicked souls. The fact that could be allowed in America is beyond comprehension. You're hearing a preacher tonight that's old-fashioned enough to believe that a man who is for the communist destruction of America and for revolution ought to be in a penitentiary or in Soviet Russia, one or the other. I'm sick of our colleges opening the doors to a bunch of mangy, flea-bitten, hound dog so-called people coming in and telling our young people they are bent on revolution. And worse than that, a bunch of television stations opening their cameras and pointing them to those shaggy, mangy, flea-bitten people and saying, tell us your plan. God pity that kind of thing that's destroying our nation. We spend $70 million a year in America fighting the communism and atheism that Russia is trying to cram down our throats, and yet the outstanding record as far as sales is concerned is not back home again in Indiana or back in Virginia where I was born or the eyes of Texas are upon you, but back home again in the USSR. If we had a Supreme Court that had an ounce of integrity and decency, they'd ban that kind of rot in our country. The honest, simple truth is that we're being choked to death by our so-called freedom. Nobody has a right to be free enough to steal our freedom. Nobody has a right to use our freedom to destroy our freedom. We've got the idea that we're having peaceful coexistence in Soviet Russia. Russia dedicated herself years ago, and that dedication is no less rigid and dedicated than it was before. She dedicated herself to destroy America and bring communism around the world. Paul Cantor, of the Jefferson Airplanes. And by the way, that's the name of a singing group, Jefferson Airplanes. I hope they crash. Paul Cantor of the Jefferson Airplanes said on the Les Crane Show, and I quote, "The new rock music is intended to broaden the generation gap, alienate parents from their children, and prepare young people for revolution." Did you hear that? Now, this guy said it. He said it on the Les Crane Show for all to see it. He gets up and says it. Now, the rock music, and he's from one of the groups, the rock music, he said, is dedicated to separate the parents, to broaden the generation gap, and to prepare young people for revolution. The only people more guilty than he is are the folks that watch such shows as that. A lot of you thrive on turning on your television set and watching some of these heathen, infidel, communistic, atheistic traitors to American freedom. If you turned the thing off, there'd be a lot of folks who wouldn't listen to it, and they'd get that rot off television sooner or later. Bobby Dylan is called by the Communist People World Publication as America's greatest poet. Did I pronounce that right? I did not ask you. Because you think that I thought you knew too much. Bobby Dylan is called by the Communist People World Publication as, quote, America's greatest poet. Look magazine said that he is, quote, he's unchallenged as a teen and college crowd absolute hipster. And here's one of his recordings. Are you listening? This is one of the recordings. I mean, sold in our town, sold in these record shops, sold in these jewelry stores. Here, the young people, don't you talk while I'm preaching on this. Now, you sit up and listen. You need this, and you're going to hear it tonight. Don't you even move. In fact, quit breathing for a while. Bobby Dylan recorded these words. "Come, mothers and fathers throughout the land. Don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you can't lend your hand, for the times are changing. The line is drawn. The curse is cast. The slow one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading. The first one now will later be last, for the times are a-changing." Now, that's what Bobby Dylan sings, and that's what these kids... But you don't hear these words. I can't understand these words. But look, these folks know what the words are. They have a language all their own. I'll say a few words about that after a while. If I found one of my children listening to that kind of stuff on the radio, I would tear the radio right to pieces immediately after I performed the funeral of my child. You call me what you want to call me, but, brother, nobody's dedicated to treason is going to sing in my living room if I know about it. The music of our nation is dedicated to revolution. Phil Ocha is one of the heroes and darlings of the revolutionaries. By the way, these songs are played on the Hammond station. Phil has one record called, and his records are selling by the millions. Phil has one called, "I Ain't A-Marching Anymore." That one is against the Vietnam War. How do you like this for a song, one of his songs? "Draft Dodger Rag." Our boys and girls are listening to it. This traitor, this Judas Iscariot, this Benedict Arnold is publicizing it. Now, I'll read you what this singer, Phil Ocha, said. Quote, "The Viet Cong are right. We should support Ho Chi Minh." Now, I dare you to go out here to one of these stores. I'm talking about in the shopping center out at Woodmar. I dare you to go out there and look and see if you can find some of these records. They'll be there. And others just like them. He's created popular lines such as "White Boots Marching in Yellow Land. We're fighting in a war we lost before the war began. We're the white boots marching in the Yellow Land and top soldiers of the world." Here are some of the words. "We rammed into your harbor and tied to your port. Our pistols are hungry and our tempers are short. So bring your daughters around to the port, for we're the cops of the world." That's one of the nice songs they're singing. Here's one that's also being sung. "The war's over." Here are the words. "Serve your country in her suicide. Find a flag so you can wave goodbye. But just before the end, treason might be worth a try." Those are words that come from one of his songs. The Lovin' Spoonful, that sounds like a wonderful spiritual group. The Lovin' Spoonful published an article entitled "Revolution 1969. Revolution 1969. The second thing I want to say is not only is rock music dedicated to destroying our country and bringing communism in, but rock music is also dedicated to the sale and use of drugs in America. And don't you, like the ostrich, put your head in the sand and think all the drug users are out yonder in the high schools and the Episcopalian churches. Brother, we've got them right here in these pews tonight.